welcome to PBA at noon. Today's webinar is in collaboration with our friends at Kin Communication. As always, I'm joined by my colleague, Sophie Caesar. We are very excited to have a unique story for you today. Joining us is the CEO, Matthew Schwab of Kraken Energy, which trades on the CSE under the symbol UUSA and on the OTCQB as UUSAF.
Welcome, everyone. Kraken is a new energy company advancing its 100% owned Apex Uranium Property located east of Reno, Nevada. The Apex property is recognized as Nevada's largest past-producing uranium mine. Additionally, the company has two other significant land packages, the Garfield Hills Uranium Property and the Huber Hills Uranium Property, all located in Nevada. I'll leave it to Matt to fill you in with the details. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the intro, Paul and Sophie. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us today, learn a little bit more about Kraken Energy. I guess I'll share my screen right now and kick things off.
Perfect. And then I'll just remind everyone that we'll take questions afterwards, and you can put your questions in the Q&A as Matt does the presentation.
Thank you very much. So for anybody unfamiliar with Kraken Energy, we're a rather new but rapidly evolving junior uranium exploration and development company focused solely on the US market. And in saying that, there are two really key points that I'd like people to take away from this presentation that I give today, and is related to how our company's strategy allows us to both lower initial investment risk by trying to skip the stage of greenfields exploration, while at the same time giving us the opportunity to fast track our properties to a production ready state. So at the moment, we have 3 high-grade uranium projects, all located in Nevada, as Sophie said. They're all past producers, which is a very important point I'll touch on further into the slide deck. We're really only focused on tier 1 mining jurisdictions right now, being Nevada, but also looking at opportunities in Utah, Wyoming, Montana, potentially Arizona, Washington, just so you get the idea of where we're looking. We only want properties that have regionally high grades. So speaking in that way, looking at historic production grades in the range of 0.25% or better. We want to see surface samples that show 1% up to 3%. And across all 3 of our properties, we have a current mineralized surface extent of 3.5 to 13 kilometer strike length. All of our properties are accessible year-round. They have great infrastructure with road access to and through the properties. All 3 have access to power infrastructure and very close water access, despite being in the Nevada desert. All of our properties, everything in the portfolio currently has additional value added to the properties through other commodities, being gold, silver, copper, nickel, and molybdenum at the moment. And all of this is really brought together by the experienced team that we have in place, which was really one of the reasons that I was so excited to jump on board with Kraken and take the helm. Just a really quick snapshot of the properties that we currently have at Kraken Energy. Garfield Hills, we've been actively drilling since November. We're actually going to be shutting that project down today on our final drill hole. Initial focus of that project was to get out there and reconfirm the historic results of 0.18 and 0.26% U3O8, both over 14-meter intervals. We've done that, which you'll see later into the slide deck as well, and mineralization is currently open in all directions and at depth. The Apex Uranium Mine was the original flagship of Kraken Energy, and for great reasons. It was Nevada's largest past-producing mine. It produced 106,000 pounds of U3O8 at an average production grade of 0.25% back in the 1950s. And the most recent addition to the property being Huber Hills, which was Elko County's largest uranium producer at an average production grade of 0.24%. So really going back to those 2 key points that I said I'd like people to take away from this presentation, when we're looking at property evaluation and project acquisitions for the company, bringing and building up our portfolio as we move forward, we really want to focus on a few very key criteria that allow us to accomplish those 2 points. So when we're looking at our projects, we want past producers, or we want projects that have a historic resource in place, whether it be compliant or not, or at very least some advanced stage of exploration, say drilling that has confirmed assays, U3O8 assays that we can go back to and follow up to build up a resource. We want to focus on tier 1 mining jurisdictions for the sole fact that we don't want to be stopped anyway through our ideal fast track production model, where we encounter socio-political feedback that gets in the way and wastes shareholder money and wastes our time. Access to infrastructure is key. Across the board, as I mentioned, our properties are very well situated, and looking at the jurisdictions that we're in and looking to acquire properties in, we're very well forward facing in that respect. Value add metals, of course, it's a great addition to every one of our properties. And as we move forward, gold, silver, molybdenum, all of them, they really just build up shareholder value for the entire company. Looking at the team that we have in place, as I mentioned, so a very quick introduction from Sophie and Paul. Myself, I started in the industry back in 2009. I was part of the development team at a company called Hawthorne Exploration, for anybody familiar with it. I was part of the team that expanded the resource, went through the pre-feasibility portion of the company, and was part of the sale to Rio Tinto back in 2011 for $650 million. Following that, I spent a bit of time at Rio Tinto and then moved to Next Gen Energy, where I was the third employee at the company. I was the senior exploration geologist at the time of targeting and discovery of the Arrow deposit. Besides that, looking at our team we have here, Garrett Ainsworth is a very well-known name in the industry, responsible for the discovery of the Patterson Lake South deposit and the sale of Alpha Minerals. Galen and Troy, both parts of Next Gen Energy, key players at that company as well in different areas. Troy spent, I think, about a decade as well at Cameco. And what I really like people to take away from this slide, the group that we have put together, is that we really encompass the entire spectrum of uranium exploration and mining, from greenfields exploration through multiple discoveries, feasibility, development, all the way through to production, which is very important for a company like ours trying to fast track a production model. We're continually building on that team, most recent addition being Madeline Berry, our senior geologist. She has an extensive history of exploration and mining management in Northern Canada and Alaska, as well as a bit of time spent at Next Gen Energy. The only person you don't see on this slide is the new addition of our Vice President of Exploration. Hasn't been released yet, but he's a gentleman from Nevada, local down in the States, who has 22 years experience across the board, from junior mining to major companies and consulting. He'll be a great addition to the company to help us moving forward. So getting right into the projects, looking at Garfield Hills, as I mentioned, the first project that we started drilling at Kraken Energy. Very well situated, 12 kilometers east of Hawthorne, Nevada. Great infrastructure, as you can see on the map there, road infrastructure across the property. The property was originally optioned to us at, I think, about 350 hectares. As part of our exploration process, we initially flew an airborne radiometric and magnetic survey. Very quickly realized that there was far more potential on the property and expanded that property package to almost 1,300 hectares now. There is a 2% NSR on this property, but 50% of that can be purchased back for $250,000. As I mentioned, the initial focus of the drilling project was to get out there and confirm the results that you see on the screen right now, 0.18 and 0.26%, both over 14-meter intervals. Based on our last press release that came out the Monday of last week, you can see here on the screen that we've definitely done that. This is only the drill holes from the start of the program to end of 2022. We're still progressing with that, seeing great results across the property, and very excited about seeing the assays that match up with decent results. Further to that, looking at the map on the right, is what you see is the radiometric survey that we flew. The one that I said showed us very quickly there was more potential on this property. The dots across the property are where we've actually gone out. Our team has gone and surface prospected to confirm the radiometric results from the UAV survey. And at present, we have over 4 kilometers of strike length of known mineralization on surface to follow up and build a phase 2 drilling program off of what we're currently finishing up. The Apex Uranium Mine, as I said, the original flagship of the company, nicely placed 5 kilometers south of the small town of Austin, Nevada. Current property is 3,900 hectares. There is a 3% NSR that can be acquired by Kraken as we move forward, but a very nice land package. And moving forward, you can see the potential on this one as well. What you see here on the right, again, is the UAV radiometric survey. On this property, you see on the west side, the historically producing Apex mine, and the far east side, the historically producing Lowboy mine. On the map, the red and yellows show uranium mineralization on surface. The red and white dots show where we've gone out and actually confirmed mineralization on surface on the property. So at present on this property, we have 13 kilometers on surface of known uranium mineralization. quick snapshot again of the previous numbers that came out of this property back in the 1950s. And the key takeaway here, and it actually applies to all of our properties, is that this project was shut down before reaching its potential. So the primary reason that most of these properties were explored and put into production back in the 1950s was because of the incentives offered by the US government for uranium production in the US. As those incentives were taken away at the end of the 1950s, these projects were shut down prematurely, which puts us in a great position to go back, acquire these properties, and push them forward based on the historic reserves. Just a few numbers from the drilling results from Apex back in the 1950s. Again, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, these numbers are very significant. So 3 meters at 1.3%, up to 34 meters at 0.4%, 15 meters at 0.5%. These are the numbers that built the currently non-compliant resource that we're going to go back to, and that will be the initial focus of drilling on this property to build up that resource and move forward in that fast-track production model. As I mentioned, there's value-added metals across our properties. Apex is a perfect example of this. It actually started as a silver mine back in the early 1900s. Grades of up to 7,300 grams per ton silver. In the 1980s, more exploration was done, showing gold grades of up to 15 grams per ton. We've got surface samples of 3.2% U3O8. And to show the continuity of mineralization across the property and of course across the historic mining operation, a 250-ton bulk sample was taken that averaged 0.7% U3O8. Huber Hills being our most recent addition to the company's exploration portfolio. Again, very nicely situated, only 2 kilometers away from Mountain City, Nevada, hour and a half north of Elko, Nevada. The property is roughly 1,000 hectares at the moment, and it was actually a staking opportunity, not an option agreement, so there is no NSR on this property. Again, being Elko County's largest past uranium producer, it produced roughly 10,000 pounds of U3O8 at an average production grade of 0.24%. In 2007, a little bit more recent exploration was done on the property, confirming 4.5 meter channel samples at 0.149 and 0.102% U3O8. And this property shows molybdenum showings across the property as well, giving additional value add. Real quick snapshot here of the progress on the different projects, and we really want to focus on moving them forward concurrently, leapfrogging one to the next, so that we're progressing them all to a state of feasibility or better in a similar time frame. So Garfield Hills, as I mentioned, we're currently wrapping up the original drilling program. Apex, we're still waiting on drill permits. It's in the hands of the U.S. Forest Service, but everything is looking great on that front, and we expect to commence drilling as soon as possible. Huber Hills, a little bit earlier stage, so still waiting for the snow to come off so that we can get out there, do the initial UAV radiometric and magnetic surveys. Look forward to drill targeting and potentially drilling this property in the last half of 2023. Quick look at our capital structure, which is actually a very clean and concise capital structure with fully diluted shares of 64 million outstanding right now, cash in the bank of 8.5 million. Looking at an enterprise value of about 9 million for the company right now, and 22% of the company is currently held by management and insiders. And really bringing it all together. So all the points that I've highlighted really lead to the fact that we do have a clear path established for the strategic goal of the company, making a fast-track production model for domestic uranium production in the US. The properties that we have are fantastic in their own rights. We're constantly looking at more project acquisitions and additions to the company as we move forward to build up that hub and spoke mining model. And as we go forward, the team that we have in place is definitely the right people for the job. And that more or less wraps up the presentation.
Off with just to maybe, get people familiar with the uranium space.
Sure.
Can you touch on what you think the short-term future is for uranium moving forward?
Well, the demand isn't going down anytime soon. It's only increasing continually as we see longer contracts being signed, larger contracts being signed around the world. Demand is increasing and supply is decreasing. We're in this point now for the last 20, 30 years where we are able to bridge that gap through the decommission of nuclear weapons. That's gone now. right? So looking forward into the coming years where people are projecting 75 to 100 million pound year gap between supply and demand, how else can we supply that besides fast tracking projects? You know, you look at places like the Athabasca Basin, which is, you know, the foremost uranium producer in many ways in the past. But the projects that are there, if you look at the discoveries that have made in the last 15, 20, 30 years, they still haven't produced a pound of uranium. So, and in considering that, the fact that we still have 10, 20 years out before any of the, or some of these will produce a pound of uranium, where are we going to come up with it? We need to look at other models. We need to look at ISR. We need to look at conventional mining models that are easily accessible based on infrastructure and the ability to fast track production. So looking at that, I'm very optimistic about uranium. I am, and I'm very optimistic about projects that can be fast tracked to production to actually fill that supply and demand gap where we haven't really thought about it in the past. People have always fallen back to hydrocarbons as the easy solution. But we're running out of the option to do that based on the green initiatives that are being put in place around the world. We don't have that option anymore. Of course, as the easy solution, we will to a point, but we need to move forward as uranium being the critical factor in our energy infrastructure moving forward.
So you touched on so many points that I have so many questions for. So let's start off with your last point. So
Sure.
is uranium considered a strategic metal, and does the US government provide funds under the new strategic metals program?
Yes, they do. So the US government, it's kind of been back and forth, and they've only started very recently to firm up their plans for how the incentives they've offered are actually going to be allocated to companies. They've announced almost $6 billion to be an incentive towards the domestic production and enrichment of uranium in the US. They are currently, I think they've signed 3 contracts, production contracts going forward with companies operating in the US, with the key criteria being that these projects are at a feasibility stage or better. And going back to my mention of why we're trying to concurrently move our projects forward to a feasibility state or better, that's so that we can capitalize on those incentives that are being offered and increase shareholder value for the company.
Okay, so next question, and you just brought up another question I want to ask you.
Perfect.
So would you consider yourselves a miner or a developer? And, you know, is the plan to take it into production? And if it is, then maybe this is like 3 questions in one. Can you explain how uranium is mined and then produced?
Sure. So to answer the initial part of the question, we are not a mining company. We're an exploration and development company. So again, looking at these past producers to fast track a production model. And, you know, again, timelines can definitely fluctuate based on circumstances, political, whatever. Looking at potentially being in a production state on some of these properties within a 5-year range, something along those lines. So at that point, then yes, we can move into the mining mentality. As far as you know, how the uranium model mining model comes into play, yes, milling, of course, is a very important part of this process, and we've considered that looking forward in our strategic plan for the company. And it's quite variable, to be quite honest. Similar mines and conventional mines have used a variety of different methods, from heap leach. So, you know, a basic heap leach operation has shown recovery of up to 95% in the past, if it can be permitted. Besides that, there's only one operational uranium mill in the United States, being White Mesa. They've offered fee milling arrangements for the past decade or more, where people or companies were shipping uranium ore up to 16 hours away, right? So, and it's still at a profitable state. Besides that, there are uranium mills across the US that could be refurbished based on their current state, based on the capacity, to satisfy the demand of all of the uranium companies out there right now, because most of them have this issue to look forward to. So looking at that down the line, yes, we've considered it. There are multiple ways we can go about it, but until we have resources in place, we're not going to waste too much time or money on that part of the process just yet.
Okay, so that brings me then to what is the cost of drilling and what is your current cash position?
Currently, we have $8.5 million in the bank. That puts us very well positioned for the next couple exploration programs that we have planned, whether they be Apex, phase 2 at Garfield Hills, or Huber Hills coming up. Exploration in Nevada is actually quite simple. Again, great infrastructure. So on average, we would expect to be looking at a cost of $350 to $400 per meter of drilling.
Okay. And this is a great, I know you mentioned it, but we were asked here if you could reiterate the 2 key points of your presentation and the company that you mentioned at the beginning.
Absolutely. And, this really comes back to just the experience of our team in industry and the successes we've had, the hurdles we've had to overcome, et cetera. Greenfields exploration is, in my mind, the biggest exploration or investment risk in exploration. Sometimes you're borderline rolling the dice, whether you're actually going to go from a junior explorer to something to a company with a resource. So by looking at the criteria we have in place, skipping that stage, we really do lower the investment risk for our shareholders as we move forward. And besides that, looking at all the other criteria we use in our selection model or evaluation process really does give us the best opportunity to fast track all of the projects we have or the projects we bring in to a production ready state.
Okay. And I'm sure Paul has a bunch of questions, but just before he asks, so you have these 3 properties, you're moving forward. What would you say is your, where's your focus going to be in the short term?
Well, personally, my focus is going to be on building the exploration portfolio, bringing new properties into the company to really focus on the potential of a larger hub and spoke mining model. While our new vice president of exploration, of course, his goal is going to be building up the geology team and focusing on confirming those resources and those historic results from our properties as we move forward to build up a resource model.
Excellent. Paul, do you want to ask a question or two? I'm sure you're dying to. Paul, your mic.
Sorry about that. I just want to touch on the other minerals that you have on your property. I mean, and it goes back to how do you produce uranium? So are you just scooping it up and putting it on a leach pad, and how do you separate the gold and the other metals that you have in there? And how can you monetize that? Or is that going to be too difficult?
No, it definitely can be done, especially based on the grade of mineralization we're looking at. There are issues. So again, looking back to my experience in the Athabasca Basin, where you're looking at production grades of up to 20% in some cases, that definitely gets in the way of extracting other metals. Because we're not facing that same hurdle, we definitely do have the opportunity. Now, I'm not a metallurgist in any way, shape, or form, so I'm I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But yes, there are plenty of studies out there that show that we can extract those additional metals. And, a point of interest is that all of the previous exploration companies that were on our properties or in Nevada in general, they were very focused on one commodity at a time. So the information that we have looking back was focused on gold, silver, or uranium. Now that we've gone back and we've done more detailed soil sampling grids, we're seeing anomalies of multiple value-add metals, nickel, again, molybdenum, copper, things that were never reported in the past. So it's really a great opportunity as we move forward to make sure that we're capitalizing on the proper assaying methods so that we can really build more value as we move forward.
And what historical data do you have on the properties that you have now as far as grades or what's there? Or
again, most of it comes
beginning the exploration.
Most of it comes from the production information that we have. So looking at production grades of 0.25, et cetera. The drilling from Apex is definitely, that's what built up the historic resource. Those grades of 3 meters at 1.3%, 34 meters at 0.5%, et cetera. So that one, it definitely has more information than the rest of the properties, but it does give us a great opportunity having historic mining operations on the property that we can go back to as a focal point and build outwards from there.
Okay. Now you just discussed.
Sorry, Paul, to interrupt. I have a question. Matt, what's the permitting like there? I mean, it's my understanding that Nevada is friendly. Is it different for uranium?
No, not in our experience so far. So our permitting at Garfield Hills took a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
So they're a very mining friendly state, and we couldn't be happier with the process so far.
Excellent.
Okay, this is a bit educational for the people on this call because there's not a lot of uranium companies out there. what's considered a good grade, like a mineable grade? If you had, 200-meter stretch of point whatever, like what would be a good
But
grade? Okay, we found
that's
a
a
mine.
really good question. And just to kind of put it into perspective, worldwide mining grades for uranium are skewed by the Athabasca Basin. Plain and simple, they're skewed because of the phenomenal grades they have there. But if you look worldwide, there are very profitable mines that operate at a 0.02%
Wow.
production grade. So looking at 0.2%, 0.1%, and surface grades of up to 3% or better, we're definitely in the higher end of the spectrum.
Okay. You talked about looking for new properties to enhance your portfolio. Would they be in the same area, like just expanding around where you are, or would you move elsewhere?
We're open to different opportunities for sure. Like I said, we're sticking to tier 1 mining jurisdictions, looking at Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Washington, Arizona, those kind of areas. There's actually a very significant history of uranium exploration and mining across those states that most people actually don't know about. So we're kind of faced with the situation of going back and digging up files that have been ignored for 60, 70 years, but does put us in a great opportunity or a good situation for more opportunities as they come up. We have multiple assets that we're looking at right now, so it's an ongoing process. And honestly, my goal for the year is to have at least 5 exploration properties for the company or better.
Okay. There's nobody around, like there's nobody else around you except for the old Apex mine. That's,
Yep.
like the properties are still there. But going back again, like when you pull the uranium out of the ground, what type of uranium is there? And is there anything that has to be done to it once it gets out of the ground? The production to enhance it, to make it different or whatever?
Definitely, but that comes further down the line. So there's an enrichment process involved, but that's not necessarily part of the stage that Kraken would be involved in. That's further companies down the line. Definitely part of the process, but nothing that we're going to be concerned about at the moment.
Is it easier to process higher grade ore than lower grade ore? I mean, does that make a difference?
I actually don't have an answer for you on that one. I'm not sure.
Sorry, I mean, this is educational to me as well.
No,
Because
I appreciate it. That's
I
definitely a good
seriously
point.
want to look at the uranium space, but I do have some questions.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Now-
Matt, sorry, Paul, I have a
Go ahead.
question. In terms of your shareholder structure, you did mention it, but if you could touch maybe on your largest shareholders and what insider ownership is.
For sure. So management insiders account for 22% of the company right now. We're definitely lucky with the strategic shareholders and the partners that we have. Our last financing was largely due to Aventus Capital, Claris Securities, and key shareholders like Michael Gentili and Peter Grandich. So they're still large supporters of the company, and we're very appreciative for their support.
And do you have any analyst coverage yet?
We're building on the marketing right now. Definitely had to revamp that as I took over as CEO. So it's a work in progress, but definitely moving forward in that way.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, just a couple of final questions. How deep do you have to drill, or how deep historically has the drilling been around the area?
So as I mentioned, we're really focused on conventional mining operations. So looking at near or at surface mineralization and deposits. At Garfield, currently we have mineralization from surface, 0 meters down to 170 meters.
Well, so basically it would be an open pit operation.
Ideally.
Moving forward. Okay. One final question. Why the name Kraken?
I would love to
I
give
had
you an
that
answer for
question.
that, but that actually predates my time. So I will dig and I will try to find out, but I don't have an answer for you on that one. But I do love the logo.
It's
No,
great.
exactly.
It is
That's what-
absolutely great.
That's why I'm bringing it up. Matthew, thank you so much for your time today. Very interesting story. We will definitely have you on the radar and keeping everybody updated on what's going on. Thanks to everyone for joining. Appreciate it. And everyone take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Wonderful. I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Bye-bye.